Afternoon. Thank you for joining us again, and welcome to episode 2 of the Silicon Valley's podcast. Today, we plan to dig deep into a topic I hear every week. Do companies within the tech industry insource and scale internally, or do they choose to outsource? Today, I am absolutely delighted to bring this person to you. He and I have known each other for a long time, and we've done a fair amount of work together. If I think of one person that I'd like to hear about technology leadership, it's Mark. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Mark Evans to the podcast. Rather than me probably list it wrong, can you set the scene for us about what your career arc looked like?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and chat, I guess.
No problem.
My career. So I always start by describing myself or introducing myself as a recovering technologist. Yeah. So way back in time, started my career in electronics, microelectronics, and then quickly realised that the tech guys, the software guys, were having way more fun and earning more money than me. Yeah. So pretty early on, moved into a tech role. Background in largely manufacturing businesses at that point in time, where technology consideration was almost more a back office support function. Yeah, I'm old, so I've been about a bit. So a back office support function. And then grew over time, realised that I was quickly becoming just the infrastructure, the IT guy. Wanted to get involved more, what I describe as front of shop, if you like, leveraging technology to support delivering competitive advantage and business transformation, not just the back office IT guy. So moved then through a number of roles, spent some time with what's now HP IT Services, a full lifecycle company, various other businesses, a lot of manufacturing businesses over the years. And then fortunate, I guess, because I'm old, I've seen this pattern where businesses, starting probably late 2000s, started realising on technology is not just a back office function, it's an enabler for wider business transformation. It's increasingly how we delivers the capabilities, the channels by which we meet the customer need. And then beyond that, I guess, how do we automate? How do we gain efficiencies? How do we modernize the wider business? Yeah. So kind of gone from the plumbing guy over the years to being much more, if you like, front of house. And I see my role nowadays, even though I'm still a recovering technology guy, I still like to be hands-on. You still got to keep your skills and knowledge current. I see my role increasingly, or very much so, around being in that layer, linking the business strategy and technology strategy so that there's the line of sight, you can clearly understand what we need to do in the technology space to support that wider business strategy. So the full life cycle, if you like.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone describe themselves as a recovering technologist. It's like recovering from alcohol or drugs or something.
It is a bit like that, isn't it? It's like, get your hands out of the toolbox. Sure, lots of technology people tend to be very opinionated around one particular technology stack or another. My role, I guess, is to bring a bit of critical challenge to that and say, okay, what's the best choice given the business strategy, guys? And in order to bring that challenge, I guess, you need to understand what good looks like. Yeah.
Brilliant. So obviously I've known you a while and I know your career history to date. So I want to start with a growth chapter. So something that most CTOs would aspire to or want. You built a significant team when you were at Hodge Bank in Cardiff. You brought sort of a large number of people together in a relatively short period of time. What was the philosophy behind that? And what were you trying to build? And was it just about getting bums on seats, for want of a better phrase, or how did you get the team to have genuine culture and direction when you were scaling?
Yeah, sure. So look, I was very fortunate to join Hodge in, I think it was 2016. And my remit at that point in time, Hodge is a fantastic business. For those that don't know, it's unique in terms of its ownership structure and purpose. It's run as a commercial bank to support the foundation. Yeah. A foundation which in turn supports lots of good charitable causes. So it's like one of the things that motivates people is that purpose piece. Yeah. So Hodge that in bucket loads. Come there to 2016. We had no or very little in terms of the way of digital channel offerings. So come and help define and then execute this digital strategy for this business supporting a good cause. You know, my job in terms of attracting, recruiting talent was easy because who wouldn't want to be part of that?
Yeah.
But also, you know, pre-COVID, location was part of it. Fantastic city centre location. Getting involved in doing something exciting for the first time, and 2016 being able to learn from being, if you like, a fast follower in terms of some of the lessons learned. Others had looking at what had gone well for others and also what had not gone so well. You could learn from that.
Yeah.
So it was. I look back on my career, and it's probably one of the roles I've enjoyed the most in my career. The wider environment, good exec and board sponsorship there. Dave Landon, the chief exec at the time, was fully behind, the whole modernisation, digitalisation. But also I think, look back, what went well, what didn't. I think one of the things we did well there was a blend of good, seasoned, experienced people.
Yeah.
But also attracting talent, grads and others. And it was that blend where the good, seasoned, experienced people knew what, knew the ropes, knew what it could look like. And then that was a brilliant opportunity for some of the younger folks at the start of their career to learn their trade. City centre location pre-COVID also helped as well. Teams that play together, stay together is the phrase. So there was a really good social scene.
Yeah. I was going to say your office space in One Central Square is one of my favourite offices in Cardiff. Yeah. I spent some time there, but got a great view over the head.
Oh, it's unbelievable. And I do remember you saying to me years ago, and this has stuck with me, you always wanted to hire people on their journey. Yep. It was never about hiring the finished article. You always felt that your strategy and purpose, personality suited taking that person on a journey. I've used that loads of times, and people really, really do link to that. They're like, yeah, I want someone I can take forward, but also that they can come in and grow and develop. Yeah,
and stand by that. Now, look, if you're, I always go for a number two. What I mean by that is, if you're looking, you have a vacancy, you're looking to get somebody into that role, then if you've got somebody who's been there, seen it and done it, what's the role going to offer? Yeah? Far better that you've got somebody there who has a view of how they'd like to influence, make that function their own. But they've got something to learn, something that's a bit of a stretch objective for them. Something that's going to give them something to get their teeth stuck into. Not somebody who's just going to crank the handle and say, oh yeah, I'm going to do the same as I've done in the last place. Yeah. But again, it's having that blend of more seasoned talent and the folks who are hungry and keen to make the function their own is, I think, the winning combination.
Because you did that as well, just thinking about it through, you had quite high-level contract experience as well that helped bring those people on as well. Is that something that you think works well?
Yeah, 100%, and contractors are great used correctly. They're there, they're very delivery focused. And results focused, but equally, they can be blinkered and just focus on getting that thing over the line. But you have an environment where you've got people who are there alongside, learning from these contractors, but who are going to endure and outlive those contractors is a good thing as well. You get that, persistence, that stickiness of knowledge, but also, it's a good way of quickly upskilling some of the less experienced folks.
I love that. Did you see that at Amplify a little bit in terms of taking them on their journey? Or was it very much higher? Because you were scaling quickly. Was it about bringing skills in that you need from day one?
I mean, to be honest, a lot of the people that we hired were fairly junior in their careers. They were in the first few years, but you could tell that they had a lot of potential talent. When I joined Amplify 8 years ago, we had people who started as juniors, and now they're all the way into senior and lead roles. So it's been really cool to watch them through that whole progression. And
amazing. And it looks positive for the organisation. I think also for the contractors, it's a more fulfilling, rewarding role because you get to mentor people, and people love that.
Yeah, absolutely. You built, obviously, I know this personally. You built a team that everyone wanted to be part of, and that doesn't happen by accident. And people talk a lot these days about values. So, what were the values you refused to compromise on when you scaled, and how did you stop the culture getting diluted as you grew?
Yeah, like we touched upon it earlier. I think the research says, what motivates people is, remember this correctly, purpose, autonomy, and masterliness. Yeah, being able to get your head around something. Yeah. So in Hodge, the purpose side of things was there in bucket loads. Yeah. The autonomy, scale helps there. Yeah, we were in that sweet spot. We were in a massive organisation, so we were small enough where you didn't need what I call astronaut architects. Yeah, and sort of ivory tower decision authorities and all the rest of it. Yeah. Decision making was there within the delivery teams, and don't get me wrong, it's not. You have to have intentional architecture and all the rest of it, and some governance and some controls, but you don't need that big fat layer that's not delivery focused. So I think the scale side of things helped in terms of the autonomy. The purpose bit we talked about was there in spades. Masterliness, we talked about it earlier. We were doing things for the first time. We were live. We went live, I think, with allowing customers to open service savings accounts within 9 months of building the first team. We went from 3 people in the IT department to, I think it was 2 Scrum teams, and then line of sight through to we get in savings online live 9 months later. So in terms of that masterliness, allowing people to start to understand not just the technology domain but also business domain, made it a really rewarding environment. Yeah.
And you talked about this when we spoke about it. So you talk about sort of, for want of a better phrase, the sexy elements. So like the new architecture, the new cloud, DevOps, all the things that you brought in. But as a CTO, it's almost as important to have the governance, the security, the sort of the plumbing side, as you referred to it. And I guess that's a big part of a CTO's role as well. It's not just about the exciting things. When you're in a business, it's about matching business goals and making sure the sort of train stays on the tracks.
Especially as a regulated business as well, right?
100%.
Yeah.
You have to be able to evidence. You have to have those controls, and not only that, you have to be able to evidence those controls. So how do you put those governance layers in place in order to do that? But at the same time, we were, I think most of the organisations I've worked in the past have been small to medium-sized enterprises, so you can't carry that massive governance overhead. It's a case of, okay, how do you ensure that the decisions that matter are being taken at the right time? Yeah, and how do you evidence that control? So it's always a balancing act with that too.
Yeah, you mentioned about like the team. I'm gonna rephrase this for you because but in my head I was thinking you're talking about like the Goldilocks size of team, right? Or like the right size of team, which just allows you to move really quickly and achieve all of this whilst still remaining compliant and everything. Like where does that break down? Or like how big is too big when you're scaling?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, isn't it? You will, I think, show me age, is it 10 years ago? Everybody was like, read about how Spotify have structured their teams and all the rest of it. What's that sweet spot? And I think, I won't put an exact number on it, but I think if you've got, take Hodge, I think we ended up with maybe 4 or 5 or maybe 6 Scrum teams at the end, and that was still small enough that we didn't need a design authority with non-coding architects and that kind of thing. So at that point in size, you can still achieve the governance and controls by having folks who are still delivery focused being part of the. That sounds contentious, but I'm not saying that some of the governance people aren't delivery focused, but sometimes your only job is to operate governance controls, and you haven't necessarily got skin in the game then in ensuring that the outcomes are met. It's that balance of delivery and risk. So I think that kind of 6, 7, 8 size Scrum team, you can still get away with it. Maybe beyond that, you get to a point in time where you need dedicated governance and assurance layers. And I think you need to be careful then. That potentially is where some of that friction gets introduced, where, recognise you're there to ensure, provide that assurance and governance capability, but how do you balance that with being delivery focused and getting stuff over the line as well? I think probably when you get beyond that, that's the kind of tipping point I would have thought.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that the communication gets more and more difficult the more people you've got as well, right? Because you've all got to stay aligned and understand where you're going. And all the decisions that are made. So for every new team that you add, you've got another 8 people that you need to communicate with.
Yeah, 100%. And that's arguably got more difficult in the post-COVID distributed part-time world and all the rest of it. I think in the old days, back to the time at Hodge, we All of the teams were on one floor.
Yeah.
Stand-ups, scrum boards, backlog visible, and everything else, and everybody's gathered around that. It's easier to communicate then, and we've gained an awful lot post-COVID with home working, but we've lost a bit as well as.
Yeah, for sure. So I remember you leaving Hodge, and I remember the party, and there was so many people in this place, and I thought, wow, that's such a credit to somebody to leave that. So you leave Hodge.
They were saying goodbye to me, make sure I was going.
No. So you leave Hodge and you join SMS Limited. So for people who don't know, that's a large energy solutions company across the UK. From the research that I've done, this has got a completely different feel to it right now. So we're talking about insourcing versus outsourcing. SMS gets acquired, and the lens shifts then from growth to efficiency, and from building capability to managing cost. So that's a very different outlook and feel for you as a CTO. So when you walked in there, how did that feel?
Yeah, sure. Look, just correct you slightly there. The agenda at SMS is still very much on growth.
Perfect. Okay.
But it's changing ownership from. So when I joined SMS, so for viewers who are not sure what it is, basically SMS when I joined was an AIM-listed PLC focused on energy assets, so smart meters.
Okay.
Data services, so processing data from those smart meters. And also we're getting into other asset lines. We're looking at solar and battery and that kind of thing, and also some platform services around flexibility and data and all the rest of it. And it was very much around growth. I joined it because I again, the purpose side of things, and from a data and a tech perspective, fascinating business. Change of ownership then, 18 months, 2 years ago, where we were acquired by a private equity firm. So the focus is still on growth, but it's very much around, private equity, you know what you've got. There's a clear business plan, and that business plan is focused very much on growth, but it's also focused very much on efficiency. Increase revenue, reduce costs, and all the rest of it. And private equity is a very different environment, but also, you know what you've got in that environment because the focus is very much on delivering against the business plan and achieving those efficiencies. So the one certainty is you know what you've got, and to a certain extent it's easier to get things done because as long as you can evidence that it supports that business plan, then you get the investment signed off and ticked off.
Yeah, absolutely. And
then for me, the challenge in that environment then is balancing, how do you meet the requirements of the stakeholder who have a predetermined, there's a business plan with an exit date, but also making sure that you're not just meeting those requirements, which may be shorter term. How do you also ensure you meet the needs of the business longer term, so there's an enduring longer business there? Deliver value now, but make sure you're doing the right thing for the longer term as well as.
You must have seen a bit of that as well with PE companies.
Yeah, to be honest, most of my experience so far has been working with companies backed by venture capital, and then just grow at all costs. You can lose money for the next 5 or 10 years so long as you're growing really quickly, and then flip the switch later on then to conservation and cost saving. But of course, still trying to grow as well.
But as CTOs, they're different environments. No, all of there's 3 environments there that are different. So how do you adapt your skill set or mindset when you move into these new businesses?
I think you just do, don't you? I guess a terrible answer, but I feel like you've got to have a great relationship with the CEO and with the rest of the senior leadership team, and as long as there's a clear business strategy, right, you just adapt, and it's just a key skill of being a good CTO, I guess, is just adapting to the business needs. Yeah,
and it's also almost like seasons of a business as well, isn't it? With the whoever your investor is, whether it's PE or VC, you know that there's a period that you're going to work with those, but they will exit at some point in time afterwards. Sure. So it's just saying, okay, how do you, back to my earlier point, how do you balance that, meet both objectives of delivering against their return, expected return, but also making sure at the end of that there's an ongoing business plan.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it makes sense. Fairly controversial, maybe, this. So there's a version of that story where outsourcing, and we see this right now, AI streamlining, is genuinely the right answer for businesses. They're looking at efficiencies, they're looking at cost, and AI streamlining is the way to go. But some people will say that they're just stripping the assets out, basically to dress it up as language of transformation. What do you think about that?
Yeah, like the vast majority of businesses out there operate to make money.
Yeah.
And you know, back to the earlier point, sometimes you can look at a business and say, you know, I always think about the first question I'd look at when looking at a business or looking to take on a role is, you know, what role does technology play in that space?
Yeah.
For some, it's around, you know, it is almost that support function that, and therefore the focus could be on how do you reduce that overall IT OpEx as a percentage of revenue. You know, that's one mindset. And some others then it's around the application technology is key way of reducing that overall, not you know, business OpEx, if you like, and modernising and transforming. So it depends on what that lens is and what that task is, what that question is, which is not always as simple as you think. Sometimes it can be both. You know, it can be a case of reduce your baseline IT OpEx, but also that in turn frees up funding to invest in modernisation, digitalisation, and efficiency gains elsewhere. So it's never one or the other. But that leads to some tough choices. I think that every business I've been in, maybe it's the kind of businesses I end up working in, but every one of them, you know, it's around prioritisation and focusing the resource on the right thing. And there's always more to do than you've got capacity for. That capacity may be headcount, maybe budget, normally it's budget, So therefore you should, you know, in any business you should focus your resource on those things that are more value creating and unique for you. Is what I think is a sensible rationale. So that leads you to look at it and say, okay, you dissect what you do as a business and say, there's some obvious things like security side of things, you know. Can you do a good job of running, and does it deliver competitive advantage for you running like a security operations center 24/7? Of course it doesn't. So that's kind of an obvious choice, isn't there? You outsource that kind of thing. I think you start looking at things like your cloud infrastructure management, that kind of thing. Was like it's plumbing, it's a commodity. It's valuable, but it's not value adding to the business. So then you sort of go from there and go up the stack type of thing. And again, look, you'd have to look at it in the context of the organisation and say, look, if you're a asset finance business, for example, then in that world, probably you're not going to gain a huge amount of competitive advantage from technology. So your focus could be more on how do we reduce IT OpEx as a percentage of revenue. But if you're you want to disrupt an industry through some digital offering, then clearly leverage technology is going to be a key part of your business. That sounded like a politician's answer, didn't it?
No, it's a great answer.
I completely agree with you. I don't know if you've ever heard of this before, but Wardley Mapping.
I'm a massive fan of Wardley Mapping.
Okay, so Wardley Mapping. Basically exactly what you just said, right? But on a canvas, mapping it out and saying, what is it that makes your business unique? What gives you a competitive advantage? And then trying to plot.
I know that's going to change over the next few years.
Exactly
for
right.
Those of you that are not played with it, probably worth sharing a link. It's massively valuable,
really
useful tool.
Amazing. And it's but again, it goes back to what we said on previous podcasts. The more I listen to both of you, it's the CTO CEO merge a little bit, because you're talking a lot about business goals and business drivers and strategic development, if you like. There's that crossover with CEO and CTO again, a little bit.
I think, like we've said a few times, though, I think you have to be commercially minded. Like it's just the way it is in business these days. Like if you're a technical leader, you have to be commercially minded as well.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. And so you're at Hodge and you're the good guy. You're then working for a different business where it's not as, it's growth, obviously it's pushing growth, but maybe not hiring as much, or the leader's not involved in sort of the social side or the sort of fun stuff. How do you adapt as a leader?
How do you adapt as a leader? It's a good question. You recognise that the wider organisational context and the stakeholders, wherever they work, has changed, and therefore the values have changed, the focus has changed, and that's going to lead to a very different op model. And back to what I said earlier, I used the example of working in the private equity environment. You know what you've got in that environment. You know what the focus is on. It's around reducing, looking for efficiencies in the IT OpEx, and that naturally leads you to more an outsource model. Yeah. So with that, you know what you've got got to buy into it. Yeah. And then it's not for everybody. Yeah. But like I said, you got clarity, and it's for a predefined period. So I think in that environment, it's just about taking a long hard look and saying, do you want to work in that environment? Some people love it. Some people love the directness, I guess, and the fixed time frames, and having that, no ambiguity, just FDI. And then it's around, the challenge then I think is taking the teams with you. How do you lead the teams through that? Is the interesting one, sitting there and having, to be blunt, having tough discussions with teams to say we're moving from a model where we've delivered X, Y, Z in-house to now we're going to deliver things through third party. It's not always easy. But it's a fact of life. It is something that, as companies grow and ownership structure changes, something you're likely to go through. But then, every change equally presents opportunities. Yeah. So I think one of the things we looked at as part of that was we're actually gone from a small in-house team who, they've delivered really well over the years, but actually they were quite insular. So the only opportunity they had to learn was amongst themselves. To suddenly we're going to deliver IT services from some third party, and these people are going to transfer to be across. The upside for them is that they're now joining a community of thousands of people where they got an opportunity to learn and to move around if need be. Yeah. So every cloud, as they say. Yeah. But like it's a challenging environment. Yeah. But it's part of. In fact, it's part of life. It's what you got to go through. Yeah.
I thought it was funny you started that with Mark used to be the good guy. No longer the good guy.
No, not at all. It's just, well, I guess the audience listening to this will have those situations where they'll go one time they're in an organisation that looks completely different to another, and then everyone talks about mindset and culture. It's different. So you have to adapt as a leader, and I think good leaders do. Ultimately, yeah,
and it's quite interesting because one of the things I found over the years is actually sometimes some of the people who work in the tech space are the ones who end up being quite resistant to change.
Yeah,
I think we've probably all been there, but I remember I won't mention the company, but we had a threatened walkout years back when we talked about potentially moving away from Slack to Teams. You can't do that to us. It's like you guys work in the change space, and you're the most resistant to change than anybody else. Way more than anyone else in the organisation, which is quite surprising. It's like it happens. The outsourcing, the transfer. It's like it's affected loads and loads of industries over the years, and I know we'll probably touch upon it later. But it's going to be interesting what's happening in the AI space. I know that equally, speaking to some of the big outsourcers and some of the big offshore delivery shops, they're really concerned about their business model over the next few years because they think, they expect AI to be buttering their toast in a few years. Their business model is around, margin on developers based on foreign shores, and actually, we know that AI is already making massive inroads into that, so it's going to threaten that business model. What are they going to do about it? So it's just history. It's back to where tools like Wardley Mapping are really useful at helping you understand how that landscape could change or is going to change over the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely.
That comes on nicely to this question. So if you had to give a CTO who's sitting with this decision right now, so whether to build in-house, bring in a partner, lean on AI, or a combination of all three, what framework would you give them? I guess it's very business objective specific in terms of what you can do, but from a personal experience and the way you like to work, what framework would you give them?
Well, okay, we'll come to framework in a second, but the first thing I'd say is that is not just a technology decision. Yeah, that's kind of, one of the things that we've seen over the last 10, 15 years, I guess, is IT people historically have treated themselves as being a bit different, a bit separate to the organisation. And what's the quote from somebody I worked with years back? He was an IT guy, and we had a question from the chief exec around something quite technical. And the young graduate turned around to the chief exec and said, you can't blame the muggles for not understanding magic. That's wrong on so many accounts. But also it's like recognising, hang on, we're not, technology people are not a separate part of the business. We are part of the business, yeah? So I think recognizing those fundamental things around what we do ourselves versus what we do through third party is, that kind of fundamental op model discussion is not a technology consideration in isolation. Yeah. So having the discussion around, what we do is something that should be discussed, whatever the governance structure looks like, exec or board or whatever, because it's kind of material. Yeah. In terms of frameworks, I think tools like Wardley Mapping and that kind of thing, where you start to say, allows you to start to break down the organization and say, what is the unique and value creating to us, guys? Yeah. And, I'm working with a really interesting London-based insurance startup right now, and it's where we are now. They're a data-intensive business, but you're looking at it and saying, okay, data engineering, data transformation is a massive bit of the business, a competitive advantage of the business. But where does that stop? So is it at the infrastructure layer? Well, the infrastructure is plumbing. So what about, database pipeline management and all the rest of it, and monitoring that? Is that still plumbing, or what's that line with where the competitive advantage starts to be realized and how much of it is just plumbing?
Yeah.
And you need to, first point is, you need to be able to have this discussion at a wider business level. So you need some kind of model that allows you to, a shared canvas, if you like, where you can start to say, this stuff is plumbing and everyone does it, and we can go to market and we can get it delivered at good value. There's no risk around vendor lock-in or vendors holding IP or secret source, because it's a commodity service. We can switch that anywhere tomorrow. Yeah. But above that, where we start capturing our bespoke business rules and our own IP, that's a core capability that needs to sit in-house, folks.
Yeah.
So it's having some kind of tool, some kind of shared canvas, Wardley Mapping, that kind of thing, that allows you to have a discussion, and then however you do it, different colours or whatever, this stuff is clearly commodity, third party. This stuff is best done in-house. And then, look, there are, I don't think outsourcing is as simple as that anymore either. There are all different flavours of outsourcing. I mean, cloud is arguably a form of outsourcing, isn't it? It's tin and services running in a data centre somewhere, but it's all abstracted away from you, but it's arguably a form of outsourcing, The model I've seen work quite well recently is it outsourcing, or is it your team in a foreign land somewhere? Yeah, so you get the efficiencies of some of the economic advantages of lower labour costs, wherever in some different land. Yeah. But actually, they're dedicated resource to your team in India or whatever. Yeah? So I've seen that work very well recently as well. Yeah. And then there's true outsourcing, which is black box outcome output focus. Yeah. I think I could spend hours talking about the pros and cons of that kind of thing, but for me it's around using tools like Wardley Mapping and others, reduce that complex organisation to those component parts, and then have some kind of framework that allows you to say that's unique and value creating, so we should look after that. Or actually it's unique and value creating, but the resource you need to do that is bloody expensive or scarcely available in South Wales. Yeah. So that may be, we want to look at some kind of offshoring type model where it's our people in India or Eastern Europe or whatever. Yeah. So there's lots of variants of that sourcing strategy in between. I mean,
Brilliant answer. You agree on a lot of that?
Yeah. I can't add anything to that. So it's a really good answer. Yeah.
So you touched on this already. AI. We always seem to be going to the AI question. So the last thing I want to ask is really about, because AI is changing the sort of calculation on both sides of that debate at a pace that feels quite tricky to keep up with. You're a CTO today trying to build something sustainable, so a team, a culture, a capability that the business will still value in 5 years, which you talked about. What does that actually look like? And is there a world where the answer is people first, or is that ship sailed?
Yeah. I'll answer this one like a politician. What I say now will probably get laughed at in 6 months, because Brilliant. It's all changing at such a pace. Yeah. So my view on where we are right now is, there's a lot of talk. If you look at a lot of the common use cases for AI right now, is agentic. Agentic for me is, we don't trust the technology, the models enough yet to let them loose. Yeah, so they're assisting humans. Yeah, but I think we'll see that change massively in the next few years. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm seeing that in software development already, where, when we started using AI to do software development, you'd get it completing a function for you or a line for you or like one file at a time, or then you give it to the agent and the agent starts writing multiple files. But, but there's still a human in the loop, right? The human's checking it. But now, I see lots of developers who just let it go. We're just like,
Well, that's the logical path, isn't it? You get to a point in time where day one, I guess, I don't trust this. I'm going to validate everything to actually you build confidence in it.
Yeah.
And I guess the likely outcome there is folks just accept it.
The risk is that you don't verify or validate anything that comes out the other end then. But
But it depends on the use case, I guess.
Yes.
Is that's if you're writing software, then that's fine. The QA guys would pick up the problem.
As long as you test it,
But in other use cases, it's interesting. But I think that's going to change over the next few years, and we are seeing that now, where you get trust in those models. So my view on all of that is, I do think that we could probably map this if we had more time and a whiteboard. We could map this in the Wardley Mapping way. So some of that, cranking out of boilerplate code and all the rest of it is there now, isn't it? Yeah. And it was interesting speaking to some offshore Indian suppliers. They recognise that. So their business model of armies of developers working remotely is like that's going to, it's going to fade away over the next 18 months to 2 years if it's not already. Mm-hmm. So if you're a supplier there, but also a similar consideration for the CTO, so how can you add value? We touched upon it earlier. It's being closer to the business. Yeah. What none of this is going to do is to understand that wider organizational context. And I think that one of the things we lose sight of sometimes is actually the creation of code, the functional side of things is only I think, put a figure on it, 25% of the actual value creation. Yeah. How often do you get an application that's an island that doesn't integrate with everything else? Who's going to support it? Yeah, who's going to want to? If you need to make changes to that tomorrow. Yeah, is it secure? Is it scalable? All of those kind of things. So proper engineering skills will continue to be, in demand, but also domain knowledge. Yeah, understanding that organizational construct. Yeah. We talk about prompt engineering and those are good skills to have, but you still need that business context, that business knowledge. I think it was a quote from maybe Ken Beck or somebody 9 months ago, and he'd said, "Now that I understand what the capability of AI, 90% of what I know is worthless, but the other 10% is more valuable than ever." And that stuck with me. It's probably true. All of the sort of humdrum stuff, if you're a coder, the boilerplate cranking out lines of code, it's like that's going to go by the wayside. But the domain-specific knowledge you've got and how stuff hangs together and all the rest of it, becomes super valuable.
Yeah, completely agreed. You can prompt something to death, right? But if you don't know the right questions or the right language to use, you can't get the right outcome. And it comes down to that domain knowledge, that last 10%.
So there's hope. That's the key.
There's always hope.
Yeah. You sit on... I know you obviously sit on boards. You've been involved in the Welsh tech scene for a long, long time. So we've asked people before, what does Wales, from a tech point of view, need to do better?
Yeah, look, we talked about this earlier. I think we do a fantastic job of underselling ourselves. We just kind of, we're happy with our lot. And I think for me, and I know this is often said, but shout louder, but also have more ambition. I know that there's some really, really good work going on connecting communities and providing that joined up thinking. But for me, it's around more role models, mentorship, and visible leadership in some of those areas. I think we are kind of we're not short of natural riches, and we're kind of happy with our lot, and therefore there's that bit of apathy, if you like. But it's a shame, I think it's a massive opportunity lost. So I would say, shout louder, have more ambition, and look for more role models, mentors, and leadership.
Love that. Yeah. That's similar to what Rich said on the previous podcast, but I think it's so true. It's obviously very prevalent that we need to shout about it a little bit more, be prouder in terms of what we're doing here in Wales.
Yeah, exactly. I every time I think about it, though, it's almost like a chicken and the egg situation where we need big companies, we need good role models and things like that, and that comes from other big companies and other good role models. It's a self-fulfilling thing, but where do those first companies come from? They have to come from somewhere, right? I know we're all working hard on it, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's been amazing, absolutely amazing. I think I just want to pick your brains once more because I think the audience will really like it.
You saved the difficult questions to last.
No, it's not. No. What advice would you give to a Welsh business right now that's trying to build a tech team or a division that people actually want to be a part of? It's not too difficult, is it?
No. Like I think we touched on some of that stuff afterwards. You know, I think for me is back to the purpose, autonomy, and masteriness piece. Yeah, it's and you know, okay, maybe it's not always as easy as it was in the Hodge world where you got the ownership structure and the foundation and things, but it is, you know, the purpose piece, even if it is, you know, guys, we're a startup, we want to scale up, make a success of this and have an impact somewhere. That's a, you know, in most cases, a pretty easy story to tell, isn't it? The autonomy side of things, again, you know, if you're a startup, a scale up, and you know, Wales is full of SMEs, isn't it? More S's than M's.
Yeah.
So the scale side of things naturally leads you to be able to give people more autonomy.
Yeah.
And then finally, the masteriness piece. You know, I think my experience anyway, good engineers, good techies, good developers love having problems to fix. Yeah. So again, it's getting them close to the problem. Yeah. There's nothing more frustrating or soul destroying, I think, than just being like, I'm a backroom dev, go and speak to the BA for requirements or the product owner for requirements. It's like get the dev teams close to the problem, close to the business, close to the customers, I guess would be my view.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Mark. Much appreciated. Been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And we look forward to seeing you in episode 3.